All right. So by way of introduction, I think Zay has already covered what it is that we do as the HSRC. We are an institution that has more than 50 years in existence, focusing on social sciences and humanities research. And our mandate is really to contribute to the effective formulation and monitoring of government policy. We have a mandate around the evaluation of policy implementation, but importantly, disseminating research-based and fact-based results that aim to stimulate public debate. So those are some of the things that I would like to highlight as a way of introducing ourselves. In terms of the Act, we are promulgated in accordance to the HSRC Act 17 of 2008. That is on the next slide. And I'm not going to go into details of that because of the fact that we've already spoken through the previous presentation. In terms of our mandate, some of the things that I want to highlight are really around the conversations that we've had from yesterday to today, in as far as fostering collaboration and networks and institutional linkages. And I think that has been one of my take-homes from having been in the session yesterday, to say that we need to have more spaces that enable collaboration, networking, institutional linkages, but also cross-institutional learnings. I think there's been quite a variety of knowledge sharing and information that was shared throughout these two presentations, very different in nature. These 2 days, different in nature, but things that we can certainly learn from as the NSI. So ours is to initiate, undertake, and to foster strategic, basic, and applied research in human sciences. That is on the next slide, please. And also to stimulate public debate through the effective dissemination of fact-based results that comes from our research. And where I am focused in is on the one that talks about helping build research capacity and infrastructure for the human sciences. And the one that I've just spoken of that I want to highlight is around fostering of collaborations, networks, and institutional linkages. You can move on to the next slide. That is just one that demonstrates what our mission and the vision is as the HSRC, where we are saying we want to position ourselves as a national, regional, and global leader in the production and dissemination of transformative social science and humanities research in the interest of a just and equal society. So we are active trying to be in spaces that seek to achieve this. We are organized in the organization through 2 programs for reporting purposes in our APP. We call it Program 1 and Program 2. Program 1 comprises of these divisions or offices that are highlighted in the slide that you are seeing. Office of the CEO and Deputy CEO, those are the ones that I would like to highlight. One, which is the accounting officer, and the other, which really has a mandate of ensuring that all research-related activities are undertaken, including that oversight function. In the next slide, Zainab has already spoken about the various divisions in the HSRC that seek to lead research, development, and innovation. And we organize it according to these 5 sub-programs that are highlighted there. As I move on, my focus is really going to highlight some of the initiatives that are led from the Office of the Deputy CEO for Research that seek to directly respond to the question that I am going to be responding to today. So as I mentioned, we have a research oversight and governance function, and we are also the coordination hub for all research-related activities within the HSRC, and ensuring that we meet our objective or mandated objectives as set out in our strategic plan, as well as in our APP. The one that I want to speak to today is the fact that we're wanting to be a hub that seeks to bridge the gap between evidence-based research, which is what we do, into tangible interventions that seek to address youth unemployment in the country. And I think the mandate that we have now is to have an external focus as the HSRC, where we are saying we want to be actively involved in responding to the National Development Plan, the decadal plan, not only on the side of research, but how that research translates into tangible interventions that are backed with evidence. And so today I'll be talking about the internship program that is currently located within the HSRC that I am leading, as well as other similar youth development or capacity development initiatives that we are leading. The next slide. Yes, so as I mentioned, that most of my focus will really be about the internship program, which is one that we are at the forefront of leading on behalf of DSI. If we move on the next slide, which really provides context for why we have skills development initiatives and internship initiatives that seek to address the plight of young people in South Africa. And this is because despite the positive growth that we are seeing in the labor force as it relates to graduates, youth and graduate unemployment has increased significantly from 2009 to now, where in 2009 we saw that graduate unemployment was at, we had 29,000 people who were graduates unemployed, and this has increased over time. So if we look at it in percentage form, we see that according to the new quarterly labor force survey, the graduate unemployment rate is currently sitting at 9.6%, which is a bit concerning in the context of building a capable state. And obviously, we know that when students undertake post or graduate studies, the intention is for them to increase their likelihood of finding employment. And so when we have an unemployment rate amongst graduates that's sitting at 9.6, it does say that there are certain interventions that we need to put in place to try to circumvent this. So the DSI HSRC internship program then seeks to place unemployed graduates within science, engineering, and technology set disciplines, as well as those in the humanities and social sciences disciplines at various host institutions throughout the country. So we don't recruit these interns to be placed at the HSRC, but we do it because of the partnership formed with various host institutions that I'm going to speak to as the presentation unfolds. And it's worth noting, colleagues, that we are dealing with a bigger issue around unemployment and youth unemployment, and it's incumbent on us as Science Council, as research institutions, to see where we can play a role in addressing some of these national priorities and imperatives. And in the organization, our focus is really to look at how we can contribute towards curbing graduate unemployment within the context of the bigger crisis that we have in the country. So we really want to bridge the gap between academic study and ensuring competence in performance in the workplace, because we have identified, based on research, that the fact that I am a graduate does not necessarily translate to me being able to go into a workspace and be work ready as it is required by the labor market. So we're trying to be in that space where we influence that. On the next slide, okay, I think you are there. This slide really places emphasis on the importance of work integrated learning, which is that transition period between having acquired a qualification and employment. And we recognize that work integrated learning is central to easing the transition of graduates from education to employment. And it's based on empirical research work that says that in promoting and enhancing employability, the benefits, there are many benefits that are associated with having this transition between work, between school or tertiary education and employment. And there's sufficient evidence that suggests that participation in these work-related, work-integrated learning programs do contribute to improved motivation for graduates to further their studies or to create a level of awareness and confidence, and therefore improving labor market outcomes. I'm not going to speak a lot about this slide, but just to say that there are various transitions that work transitions that graduates undergo as part of their labor life cycle, and there are factors, internal and external factors, that affect the extent to which this transition is done. And we found that if from university graduates undertake or undergo work placement, their transition into the work environment tends to be much easier than those who have not undergone some form of program. And some of these factors, if we move on to the next slide, the school to work transitions have quite a number of factors that affect and influence it. Some of the external factors are the macroeconomic factors, as well as issues around pandemics and all that we have witnessed. We're currently experiencing quite a number of volatile situations that affect the extent to which our graduates are able to access the labor market. And some of the internal factors are linked to socio-economic factors around your background, as well as your social networks and all of that. And it's important to note, colleagues, that obviously pathways for graduates are different, and you'll find that those who have undertaken or undergone some of these interventions that the HSRC is bringing do have better chances of advancing and growing their careers, because of not only the formal sort of grounding, but also other competencies that we equip our graduates with. So if we move on to the next slide about the DSI internship program. The DSI internship program, it was an initiative that was started in DSI in 2005, and it was managed by them. And then in 2007, they handed it over to the NRF to administer on their behalf. It was recently transferred to the HSRC in 2021, and the intention is to respond directly to two action areas around the need to expand the knowledge enterprise, which is the expansion and transformation of the research system and facilitate knowledge diffusion, as well as to develop skills for the economy. Moving on to the next slide, the program, as it is implemented at the HSRC since 2021, it is underpinned by a theory of change, which seeks to elaborate the causal pathways through which the intended outcomes of the program will lead to the goals intent of the program. We achieve this through generating research knowledge on the efficacy, impact, efficiency, and sustainability of the internship on the participants, the host institutions, and the labor market. So there's quite a lot of involvement of the host institution in how the program is being implemented. And central to the program is really its role in contributing to evidence-informed policy making and programming, contributing to then the reduction of poverty, of inequality, as well as unemployment. There are some principles on the next slide that contribute to that form the basis for the implementation of this program. And I'm only going to just highlight them, that the program is fit for purpose, and that it must provide relevant and appropriate work experience commensurate with the intern's qualifications. So we ensure that in our engagement with host institutions and with mentors, we pair interns with them who have qualifications that are aligned with what it is that the host institutions are doing. We don't always get it correct, but the undertaking is to ensure that someone who is qualified if I give an example, someone who is in the hydrogen sector is not placed in a space that will not enable them to bring to the fore the academic qualifications that they have acquired. And one of the other principles is the promotion of equity, in that the program should be inclusive and wide in terms of its access to include those who have been previously marginalized. And in terms of capacity, that the capacity of the relevant host institution must be able to host the intern. So there is a rigorous process where we interact with the host institutions to find the extent to which they are able to provide certain resources to aid the success of the intern. I've got quite a number of slides, please, so I want to just rush through them so that I don't waste time. I think on this next slide, I've already spoken to the purpose of the program and what it seeks to achieve, as well as the objectives of the program. Just to highlight that we want, on the objectives, to highlight the one that says we want to expose our interns to research, to development and innovation, and other priority programs that are critical in the NSI. And we want to establish and increase the pool of capable human resources for the public sector, for science councils, and for national research institutions and industry. And I think importantly is we want to be active in improving access, as I mentioned, for those previously marginalized groups into work integrated learning program opportunities and contribute to lifelong learning. If we move on to the next slide, some of the design features, I'm just going to mention them. that in terms of our focus, we focus, we know that there are certain competencies that universities equip our graduates with, but we are more focused on the transversal skills side, which serve as building blocks for the development of the hard skills and the development of work readiness competencies. In terms of who we target for this internship program, we want people who are unemployed, who are South African citizens, or who are permanent residents of South Africa, people with level 7 bachelor's degrees, honors, and BTECs, which are equivalent to NQF level 8, as well as master. Okay, so on my previous slide, which was talking about the targeted recruitment drive that we have, where we're saying the criteria that we are using is that the target audience for this internship program are people with bachelor's degrees or NQF level 7, those who are people with honors or BTEC equivalent to NQF level 8, and NQF level 9, which are your master's and your MTech qualifications. But the program does exclude people, graduates with PhDs, because there's a separate program that is run by other science councils, including the NRF, on taking care of the PhD group. But at the HSRC, there is a trainee program for PhDs as well, which is not necessarily offered by this internship program that I'm speaking to today. And also we exclude people who are in full-time studies, because we're using the true definition of unemployed, in that people who are not actively in employment or studying. Those are the target groups that we are looking at. I think I've mentioned the issue around people who are beneficiaries of the NRF bursaries, or who have previously benefited from DSI and NRF. We are excluding them from the qualification criteria, because we consider it to be double dipping. So in terms of our targets, on the next slide, is that we are looking at ensuring that we accommodate people who are Black, and Black who qualified to say African, Indian, and colored, and who are women, and people with disabilities. And those are the different targets that we have set ourselves. Young people between the ages of 18 and 35. And the disciplines, I think I've already mentioned that people who are in the SET or humanities and social sciences. And we've recently targeted these niche areas, which are the waste economy as well as hydrogen economy sectors. And we've seen partnerships that are growing from external people who are interested in hosting and funding these interns. In terms of the other design feature that I want to mention is that in terms of mentorship, host institutions that we want higher education institutions, science councils, parastatals, and the private sector. And we have been targeting the private sector because of their ability to retain interns even after their internship program, to ensure sustainability for employment of those interns. Our exclusion is that we exclude local, provincial, and national government departments, because they have their own internship programs that they run. And in terms of the mentorship eligibility, we want to assign interns to someone who is at least going to be looking after them for the duration of the internship. So we look at people who are on contracts that are longer than 2 years, or people who are permanently employed, and who have the willingness and to want to mentor and train and support the interns. I'm going to move on to the next slide. This one speaks really about reasonable accommodation support that we provide to people with disabilities that we employ, because we do have a disability target. And those people, we ensure that we support them. So if we've employed someone who has a disability they can't see, they want braille readers, there's an amount of money that we've ring-fenced to provide the necessary support. And there has been quite a bit of uptake on that. If I move on to the next slide. Yeah, I mentioned that the internship program is a 24-month program because it is informed by evidence that indicates that long-term work experience does have a positive effect on job skill matching and post-internship wages. So that is how we have structured the program. And we also have a focus on well-being, where we've got an employee assistance program that seeks to provide support for our interns for the duration of their internship with us. We've got a capacity development component, which includes training courses and baseline surveys and capacity development interventions and pre and post training assessments that we conduct. Colleagues, I'm going to move on. I'm a bit wary of time in highlighting some of the design features. Maybe I should just mention that we've got a graduate exit strategy where we don't only take care of the intern while they are still with us, but as part of our research, we want to follow up on that intern and ensure that we map out or we see their trajectory from them exiting the internship program. We have an M&E program which is quite structured, that is informed by our theory of change, and that is one of the design features that I would like to highlight. I think I've spoken. If we move on to the next slide. The one that talks about the evaluation of the program, I think I've mentioned that it is informed by a theory of change and key indicators to track the progress of our interns. So if I move on to the table, it just seeks to demonstrate the extent to which the need for such programs is a big in South Africa. You can move on. Next one. Yes. So this table really seeks to demonstrate demand versus supply, in that there are only limited spaces based on the availability of funds that are available to host interns. So in 2021, when we took over the program, when we sent out the call, we received responses from potential graduates, 8,000, almost 8.5, wanting to be placed in the program. And at the time, we had spaces for only 400 interns. This year, when we sent out the call, we received responses from 7,800 interns who were interested in participating in the program. But interestingly, from the host institution side, as well as from the mentor side, it's also quite interesting that there is appetite across the country to host interns. And so we receive these big numbers of people who wanting to be part of the program and wanting to mentor interns. And on the next slide, this really speaks to the number of interns that we've been able to place per province from 2021, as well as this new cohort of interns that we just now in September. Targeted approach where we've established relationships with communities of practice that we partner with the department to ensure that we'd raise awareness about the internship program, because previously we had issues of not meeting our targets in the disability front. On the next slide, I think since we started the program in 2021, when it moved to the HSRC, we had a target of 8 placements, and percentage-wise, it was 2%. We did not meet that target, but since this targeted approach that we've applied, where we are partnering with other institutions that specialize in this area, we've seen how we've been able to exceed our target. As to date, we have 14 persons with disability that are hosted by various host institutions. So to conclude, colleagues, I want to make the point that since its inception, the internship program has benefited over 6,900 interns. This is from its inception. And in the last 2 years, we've made strides, including the migration of the program from the NRF to the HSRC. I think one of the things that worked there with that transition is the fact that we took the staff that were running the internship program from the NRF and we brought them on board on the HSRC side. We've exceeded our performance on a number of indicators, which is the placement, as well as the gender, the race, as well as the disability most recently. And we've begun to focus on prioritizing the placement of interns in priority areas, such as the green economy, the hydrogen economy, as we are actively trying to have interventions that speak or try to address the imperatives in the decadal plan. And with that, colleagues, I'd like to thank you, and also thank you for your indulgence with my connectivity issue.